Okay, we're going to get started continuing where we left off last time with Galvanize Secrets when we implemented the sign-up functionality. So we're going to work on login functionality today, and perhaps we'll get to some more, and if not, we'll continue with the authorization stuff tomorrow or later in the week, perhaps next week. But let's finish off the authentication at the very least. So I'm in the repo right here. I haven't made any commits to the repo, so I'm essentially just want to make sure that the code that I'm working with here is the same as sort of the starting code. So I'm just going to check this login function real quick. Let's see. We'll make sure that I don't have any changes in here. Actually, you know what? It looks fine. So this is starting sort of from the default that the project was initialized with. And essentially all this login function is doing, it's pulling some data values from the form, the login form, and it's passing that data in a post route, sending it to the back end. Right now, all it's doing in terms of handling the response is just logging it. And that's fine. We're going to leave that as it is for right now. And the two files that we're going to work with the most today are, again, going to be this app.js file within our public scripts, essentially the code that's running on our front end. And we're going to work with, at the very least, this auth.js file from our routes. So here you can see we have the post, the sign up route that we implemented last time, and that should be working for everybody. So now let's implement the logic to make the login work. So right now we don't actually need to touch anything on the front end because this login function that is bound to the form login button is essentially doing all the work for us right now. It's gathering the input values and it's sending them to the login route. So let's focus on that login route to begin with. Now, actually, let's reference the user stories right here. So we kind of took care of all this sign-up process stuff last time. We're setting client sessions, we're sending tokens back, we've got our routes all working in the server, encrypting passwords and whatnot. So we kind of have this whole section done. We're going to really focus on login process right now. And fortunately, we're going to be able to not quite reuse the code from our sign-up, but use it as a bit of a template. The login route, once it's finished, is going to look pretty similar ultimately. And then, like I said, we might get into authorization, some of the authentication, additional authentication here for checking for session tokens. We may not have time today, but we'll get to it very soon. And then we can probably implement this logout process since that's a pretty simple little user story. So first thing for login process, we want to compare the input password and the hash password. So we are passing the input password from this login function. It's part of the data object that we're passing to the back end, so we have access to username and password. So in our back end route, why don't we make sure that we have proper access to it? I'm going to remove this res.json message, and let's just throw a console log. Actually, you know what? Let's set it to a variable. Let's do let password equals rec.body, because all this data is being passed in the body, dot password. And let's log that password. So if I go over here, I'm in my Galvanize Secrets repo. I've run the npm start command, so my server should be running. And this is a application where the front end, the public folder, is being served from within the server. So we don't have to run anything else, but that npm start script should do the trick. So let's take a look at the browser. Have secrets open up here. Looks good so far. Email, password. So if we type an email in here, I'm going to do matt@mattwinzer.com. You can do whatever you want. This is essentially just test right now. Password, I'm just going to do Matt. And so if we submit this form, we don't see a console log on the front end because that's a console log in our back end route. But, we're not getting a log here. Post to /login. All right, let's just log rec.body first of all. Rec.body. Let body equal rec.body. Log body. and start there. And let's make sure that this is being sent to the proper route. URL/auth/login. That should do the trick since we had auth/signup. All right, let's try that. Refresh the page here. I'll just put in another email. It doesn't really matter right now. Submit. Again, we're not getting a console log. All right, let's debug this a little bit. In our login function, let's log data and make sure that that's being hit properly. So any log that we have in here, and let's go ahead and log like hello, just as a test. Make sure that this login function is properly attached. Should be. Oops, back to the app. Again, if we submit, I'll do a hard refresh to make sure. I'm just going to put in some like gibberish data here since it's not very important. Oh, we got some validation. All right, we are getting hello. Username is undefined. Password is Matt. So we have this field is actually called email rather than username. So that might be part of our problem. So let's go ahead and change that. So if we go to our code, take a look at our index.html. Let's find the spot where we're logging in here. Looks like email, password, submit, username, email, password. So this username, email, password, I believe, is the sign up. So if we were to click over here, that's the sign up. Yeah, username, email, and password. When we log in, we don't actually care so much about username. We just want to capture email and password and pass those to the back end. So, placeholder username. Oh no, that's for the sign up. So up here, kind of close to the top of your index.html page, let's make sure that we're actually selecting this. So if we go back to our app.js file in the public scripts, let's change this const username to const email. And the input name here I think is login-email. Let's check that to make sure. Yeah, name is login-email. So if we change both of those, we should actually be capturing the email properly. And then data, this data object we want to change to email as well. Because essentially we're just bringing both this email variable and this password variable, turning them into a data object. Do we all have those changes so far? Okay, let's go ahead and try the sign in again, or the login, and see if we're getting the proper, do a refresh to make sure. Matt@winzer.com. Matt. Great. Now we're actually populating that data object properly. Wonder if that was our issue. Why are we still not getting a log here? You know what? I'm going to kill this, run nodemon, see if that makes any difference. All right, let's refresh the page. Matt@winzer.com. Matt. All right, we are capturing the data properly on the front end. Great. Now we are getting a console log on the back end. Are you both getting a console log?
I just broke mine.
You broke yours?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at it.
I had these out here, and then some stuff would show up, but no matter what I do, the email's not showing up.
The email's not. Okay. Is it logging the data properly on the front end? No. Getting a CORS error. Interesting. Are you running? You are running it with nodemon. Why don't you jump back to your app.js file and let's make sure that you're capturing the email and password properly. Name login-email, login-password, data, email, password. Passing the data. Yeah, that looks pretty straightforward. How about if you open up your index.html page? Scroll down a little bit. I think this placeholder here. Yeah, change that to login-email, and the placeholder also change to email instead of username. And right there as well, like right below. Yeah, that's okay. All right, let's see if that works.
Yeah.
All right, great. And do you have it working, Logan?
Good.
Okay, awesome, great. We're in business. Whoops. So, if we go back to our auth.js file, we're going to want to do a whole lot more than just console log here. So, we are verifying, though, that we're getting the data passed properly from the front end to the back end. So that's a huge first step. Now, let's take a look at these user stories. Oops. I'm going to rearrange my desktops real quick. Okay. So if we take a look at the user stories, we want to compare the input password and the hash password. So actually, before we can get to the point where we can compare passwords, we need to retrieve user information from the database, right? Right now we have nothing to compare within the actual route. So before we can properly do this comparison, we actually need to make a query to our database. So we have access to the user's email and their password from rec.body. So I'm just going to make two variables for both of those. So this is really clear what we're doing. So we'll do let email equals rec.body.email. And I'm going to do let password equal rec.body.password. Now, since we've already verified that we're capturing the body properly, we shouldn't need to console log these. If we run into any errors, we'll console log and make sure we're grabbing them properly. So what's the next step, right? We need to get some information from the database. So how do we start off getting access to our database?
Connects.
Yes, connects. And then what table do we want to query?
Users.
Users, exactly. So we'll do connects users. We'll do a dot select star. And again, this is not strictly necessary to include this select statement here, but I want this to be very clear and explicit what we're doing. If we were to leave this off, connects sort of assumes that we want to select everything, but I'm going to keep that in there. So we want to query the users table. We want what comes back to be all the information about our query, but we want to specifically select basically one user from the users table. So we'll select star where the email field in the database. This is specifically a reference to the email field in the database because our users have email, password, and username, I believe. So select star where email, oh, and an ID, of course, where email matches the email that we've captured, the email that's been passed from our form on the front end to our back end. So that's kind of the first part of the query. This is like, this is going to give us access to one particular user. So I'm going to chain a dot then on. What should come back is a single user. I'm going to use ES6 fat arrow syntax. And let's just console log the user. On the same page? Does that follow? Does that make sense logically? Query the user table, find the field where the email matches the email that we've entered into our form, that our user has entered. Then what should come back from the database is a single user, if their email matches, right? If their email doesn't match, we'll get an empty array. If the email does match, we should get an array of length 1. But let's just log what we're getting back first of all. So if we go back to our application, I guess I'll stick with this same, well, I'm going to do a hard refresh. I'm not sure if this user, I think Matt at matt.com was one of the users that I created last time. Let's just see. Yeah. All right. Cool. So whether or not you're getting like a real user coming back or not. Oh wait, no. This is just our console log on the front end. Okay. Here's our console log. So this is the user that I created last time. So it's the third user in the database. The seeds only had 2, so this was the one that we actually added with our sign up process. And essentially our code works. So we've queried the user's table. We found a user that matches the user's email that was being used to log in. And right now we're not doing anything with it, but we are console logging it. So are you getting something returning here?
Right. Empty array.
Empty array, that's totally fine. It's probably just a user that doesn't exist in your database.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. So the code is, if you're getting an empty array back, that means your code is actually working. So we do, however, now want to control for a user not being in the database, right? If we have a user that's trying to log in that hasn't signed up already, we need to handle that with some kind of error, essentially. So kind of similar to how we did here in our sign-up route. It's very similar, actually. We query our users table, we match email to email, and then if the user length is 0, in the sign-up case, that's kind of what we wanted. If the user didn't exist, we wanted to create them. So we had this if-else logic. If they don't exist, let's execute all this code to create them, get them in the database, and send back a token. Otherwise, we want to send back an error. Now, when you're logging in, it's kind of the opposite. So let's put in some conditional logic. So we want to check if user, this user right here, if user.length equals 0. Now, this would mean that they're not in the database. So it's sort of flipped from the sign-up route. If the user isn't in the database, now we want to send back an error. res.json. And let's send back an object with a key of error and a message that says email and password do not match. I don't know. What do you think? What did we send back here? Email already exists in the database. Please enter unique. Let's do kind of the opposite of that. Email not found in database. Please sign up. Now let's check and make sure that that works. We can throw an else in here because we are going to want an else. Right now we'll just put the console log of the user in the else. You can also just like leave the else off for now if you want. It's not super important. We're essentially just checking the condition right here if the user doesn't exist. So I'm going to go back over to my application. I'm going to do a hard refresh, and I'm going to enter in george@mad.com. So this is a user that should not be in the database. Just put in a password. Boom, there we go. Email not found in database, please sign up. So for the sake of brevity, we're not going to implement like proper feedback here. Kind of like when we did the sign up, we just send back errors and we're just sort of like console logging them or alerting them on the front end. If you were going to build out this application fully and make it a great user experience, you would want to do something with this error that comes back. You'd probably want to display it below or potentially have a modal pop up. I would probably just display it right here, say display the error and maybe provide a link to the sign up page, something like that. But we're going to skip that part for now. So we've accounted for the use case where the user isn't in the database. Now if they are, we need to execute some code in this else statement. So let's go back to the user stories. We'll take a peek. Compare input password with hash password for a match. So we now have access to a user. So if the user length is not 0, that means we've actually found a user that's in the database. We're going to be doing something kind of similar to the sign-up, where we created the hash, right? Like they provided us with a password here in sign-up, and we turned it into a hashed password. Now we're going to kind of need to do the opposite, because when we logged out that user, we do have access to their password, but it's all garbled up. It's encrypted, right? It's been hashed. So let's jump over to the npm JWT docs, JSON web token npm. Yep, that's what we want. And there is a function in here, a method, that is going to allow us to make a comparison. So this was when we were creating the token, this jwt.sign. If we scroll down, there's a compare function. No? Whoops. Let's make this a little smaller. Decode, verify. This might be what we're looking for. Let's see. Verify. Verify the token. Thought there was a compare function. Compare sync, I thought is what it was. Turn off my notifications. There's the hash. There's the not hash sync. Oh, sorry. This is a bcrypt thing. My bad. It's not. We're not at the point where we're using web tokens. We've got web tokens from the sign up. We're setting them in local storage. We're gonna essentially get to that point also here. But right now we actually want to compare. So if we go to the bcrypt npm docs, there is a compare sync function in here. So again, similar to what we did with hash sync, with creating a hash password, we kind of want to like not unhash the password, but bcrypt does a lot of work for us that lets us, like they do a lot of work under the hood, and they essentially let us compare a plain text password to a hash password from our database. So it's this compare sync password to check a password. You can do stuff like asynchronously. Generally, with the auth stuff, we're going to use the synchronous stuff. That's why we did hash sync. We're also going to do compare sync. The only, I just want to point out that this sync just means synchronously. So don't wait. Do it right away. So bcrypt.compare sync, and then you pass it a plain text password, and you pass it a hash password. So load the hash from your password DB. So let's go back to our code. And within this else statement, let's create a new variable called match. Let match equal bcrypt dot compare sync. And we want to pass it the password, first the plain text password. So that's the password that we pulled out of the request body. So we can do password right here. And then the second thing that we need to pass to it is the hash password. And this function returns true or false. So we're essentially going to be storing a Boolean value in this variable. I'm calling it match because if it's a match, then match will be true. If it's not a match, it'll be false. And then we'll be able to use some more conditional logic to execute more of our code. So we could also create another variable. We could do hash, since it's kind of the convention that bcrypt uses. Now this is a little verbose, but I think it makes it clearer what we're doing. So hash or hashed password. Let's just make it really explicit. So let hash password equal user at index 0, because remember, this connects query is always going to return an array. If there's no user, it'll be length 0. But even if there is a user, it's an array of one object. So we get access to the actual object by accessing user at index 0. And we'll do .password. So that should give us access to the hash password. We can pass that now as the second argument to this compare sync function. And let's go ahead and log match. I'm going to do log string match and then the value of match. So if we make it to this part in our code, we should be logging out just the text match and then a Boolean value, either true or false. So let's go ahead and try it out. We'll go back to the application. I'm going to do a refresh. Do you remember a user that is in your database?
Yeah.
You can always use the seeded users. Yeah. Yeah, you can always use the seeded users. I'm going to use that matt@matt.com. Password was Matt, I believe.
Is that false?
Submit. Came out false? Oh, it does come out false.
So if I'm in there.
Syntax error, unexpected identifier. Let me clear that out. I'm also going to restart my node mon, just because mine has been acting up at times. Let's try that again. Password, hash password. Let's go ahead and log the hash password as well. Make sure that we're capturing that properly. I'll do a refresh here. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and remove that console log on the front end because that's kind of getting confusing a little bit. So in your app.js file, you can remove the console log that we put in previously. Success? Okay. Let's see if Logan and I can get to the same point. We must be doing something right if it's working for you. Matt@matt.com. Maybe my password wasn't Matt. False.
I'm getting my password back, but I'm still getting false.
You can sign up for a new one.
Yeah, I'm gonna sign up for a new one. I must be the wrong password. So since our sign up route should work. Oh yeah, I think my password was Matt Winzer actually. Let's try that. There we go. No wonder. So the function works, right? You enter the wrong password, you get a false match. So, good stuff. Where was that hello log coming from? I want to get rid of that. Yep, let's get rid of that. Unnecessary logs. Great for debugging. You want to remove them once you're done debugging though. So we can get rid of this. We are capturing the password properly. Our comparison function is working, so we can get rid of this console log. And now we're going to need some more logic in here. So if the passwords don't match, we also want to send back an error message, right? So let's do another if statement. If match, and this is the benefit of storing that Boolean value purely in a variable. We can just do a quick conditional check. So if the match is true, then like we're in business, right? Then our user is legit, they've passed the right email and password, but let's control for the else condition first. We're gonna do something really similar to this error message. So if the user has essentially entered the wrong password, if they exist in the database but they entered the wrong password, we'll do a res.json and let's send back another object with an error message, and let's say email and password do not match. Please enter correct password. Great. So let's try that out. Do a refresh. My matt@matt.com user does exist in the database, but let's pass him that Matt password that clearly doesn't work. Excellent. We get the error back. Email and password do not match. Please enter the correct password. Again, if you were building out this app completely, you'd want to actually display some feedback on the page, since regular user is just going to be left wondering what's going on because they probably don't even know about the console. We'll skip that for now though. Yep. All right, cool. So we've controlled for two error cases. One where the email doesn't match anything in our database, so the user just plain doesn't exist and they're going to need to sign up. We've also controlled for the fact that they do exist in the database, but they've entered the wrong password. All right, so we kind of have one use case left. So if the user is in the database and if they've entered the right password, essentially if their email and password combo is correct, we want to execute some code. So let's go back to the user stories, make sure we're on track. Compare input password with hash password. Boom, we've done that. Upon failure, respond with error, done. Now we need, upon success, to generate a session token. And then we want to create the session in the client. So essentially right here, we'll generate the session token, we'll send it back to the front end, and then in the front end, we'll set the session by, using local storage like we did with the sign up, and then we'll redirect them to the secrets page like we did on successful sign up. So let's take a look at what we did for sign up. We inserted the new user. Now, of course, we're not going to be inserting, but we did this jwt.sign thing. We're going to do very similar stuff here. So here we go. If a match has been created, what do we want to do? Generate token. I'm just going to do like some pseudocode here. Generate token, create session / send token to front end. Now, there is one important thing that I'm missing right here. It's similar to something that we had to include in the sign-up process. It's security related. Any ideas on what we might be missing? When we create this token, there's essentially some data that we want to keep hidden from the front end. Any thoughts? Security.
Your password, right?
Yeah, your password, exactly. Actually, before we even generate the token, let's remove the password. Remove password. So remove password, generate token, and then create the session by sending it to the front end. So we're going to want to, basically we can execute very similar code here. We'll do, we basically do the same thing. Let payload, so this is the payload that we're going to pass to that jwt.sign function. Let payload equal user at index 0. You can go ahead and log that out to make sure we're doing it properly. I don't think we have any other console logs right here. So I'm going to go back to the application, enter in some correct information. We don't get an error coming back. These are previous errors. And we get a log of our user. So we have ID, email, username, and password. So we are going to want access to the ID because we're going to use that for authorization purposes later. But again, there's really just no need to send the password back. Like, we've done everything we needed to do with the password here in the back end on the route, right? We've verified that they have entered the correct password, that their plain text password matches the hashed password. So let's just remove it from our the data that's going to go into the web token. So let's delete payload.password. You could also do something like payload.password equals an empty string. That would keep the password key in there, so I prefer to just delete it outright. And let's keep our console log here so that we can like verify that we're doing this properly. So again, we'll do another quick submission. Great. Now we're getting back essentially the same object, the same user object, but the password's been removed. So we now have all the data that we really want available to the front end, and we've removed data that we don't want. We all on the same page?
Yeah, I don't know if mine works because every time I keep logging in here, it just says the password's not right, but this is right from the server.
Really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I don't know if
It's that Yogi password?
yeah. So it's the same one.
You know why? I'll tell you why that's not working. I'm really glad you brought that up, actually. So Logan was having an issue where he's essentially, even though he's entering in the right password, he's getting this email and password do not match. So the problem is, what's happening here is that you're running this bcrypt.compareSync function, passing it a plain text password, and then your hashed password is actually not hashed because the seeds by default are not hashed. So even though the passwords are exactly the same, bcrypt is trying to run its like decryption algorithm, or I don't know if it's even decrypting it. It's comparison algorithm on a password that's expecting to be hashed, but it's actually not. Are you having the same issue?
No, because I knew that the first two seeds were hashed.
Okay, so let's fix that together. Yeah.
That's the only reason why.
I ran into the same exact problem. I was like, man, I swear I'm doing this right. Yeah, let's fix it. It's an easy fix. So if we open up I'm gonna close these down. If we open up our seeds folder, go to users. We're gonna need to bring in bcrypt because we're using bcrypt just like we're using bcrypt in our other files here. We actually want to use bcrypt when we create these initial passwords. So go ahead and declare var bcrypt equals required bcrypt up at the top of your file. And you can leave almost all of the seed data the same. But instead of just passing a plain text password, we're going to use this bcrypt.hashSync function. It's essentially the same exact one that we used in our sign-up. You can find it on the NPM website, or if you've been following along and you have it in your sign-up route, if you go over to your app.js and just scroll down, it should essentially be, your auth.js file, and scroll down. If you want to do like a copy paste, should have this let hash equal bcrypt.hashSync. So you can copy that and then bring that into your seeds file. Set the password key to be the value of bcrypt.hashSync. First argument that the method takes is the plain text, and then comma, and then the second one is the number of salt rounds. So you can do 8 or 10. I like doing 10. If you recall from last time, we talked about not having magic numbers. So you could do, you could essentially declare a variable specifying salt rounds. I think for our purposes right now, it's clear enough what we're doing. So just go ahead and keep it as sort of a magic number. But remember that this is not the best practice. In seeds, it's not a big deal. In your actual like functional files, you probably do want to specify salt rounds because it just keeps it clear what you're doing. So we did that when we were doing the sign up. I just wanted to point that out. All right, great. So any luck now? So you'll have to rerun your seeds. I'll do the same thing. Let's just rerun them. We'll do connects seed run. That should create the users properly and have them. Now the passwords are hashed, so now the verification function should work. Let's try it out. Email. Do a hard refresh to make sure. Yeah, it worked. Okay, wonderful. So I think it was it map.winzer@galvanize.com? One of them. And the password was Yogi. Let's try that. Great, no error came back. Oh, maybe not right. Here we go. Great, there we go. Awesome. Do we all have that working? All right, sweet. So now what do we need to do? We've set this payload up properly. Now we need to actually create a web token, right? Very similar to what we did. This is our second step here. Very similar to what we did with sign up. So we're going to use that JWT.sign function. Now we could look this up. JSON web token npm. Look up the sign function. Should also have access to it in your essentially in this auth.js file, since we used that same function in our sign-up route, but I'm just going to reference it here. Let's see, sign usage. That's the first thing. Whoops. JWT.sign, pass the data payload, essentially the data we want to turn into a token, and pass that secret or private key. And we're going to ignore these options and callback functions and whatnot. So over here in our code, we can do JWT.sign. And we have access to JWT because we previously brought it in when we were doing sign up. So that's where that comes from. JWT.sign, and this method takes 2 arguments. The first one is going to be the payload. The second one is going to be our token secret. So if you recall last time, we set up a token secret in our environment variable file. Whatever you have it set to is fine. Mine's this. It's kind of the default one from the example. So if you were doing this for real, this probably wouldn't be the best secret, but it works well enough for now. So to get access to it, process.env.token_secret. And let's store this in a variable. Let token equal this function. Sweet. So this should have taken care of these first 2 steps. Let's log it out to make sure. Let's just log that token. Sweet. I'll go back to the application, try to sign in. Go back over to NodeMon. Actually, I'm going to clear this out. Make sure it's working. Sweet. We have a JSON web token. Right now it's just like a really long random string. But if we copy that from the console log and we slide over to jwt.io, we should be able to paste this in and see the actual data payload. It's a little big. All right. So if we paste this, we're in business. Payload data, ID2, email username, no password, verify signature. Right now it's invalid because the default that they try to verify it with is secret. But if I change this to one more, boom, signature verified. So if you punch in here whatever you stored as your token secret, you should get a verified token. So awesome. Let's finish this off real quick before we run out of time. So now the last step, create a session / send the token to the front end. So I am actually, maybe I'll leave that stuff there. So instead of this console log, now we want a res.json that actually controls for our proper, things worked case. So JSON, res.json, and it's going to be an object, and let's pass it token. And again, you can, with the latest JavaScript features, you actually don't have to be so explicit. You can just pass token that assigns a key and a value to be the same thing. But I want it to be super clear what we're doing. So it's almost the same as what we did with sign up, right? We pass token. So now that we're actually sending something back, in the case where things work, we should see a console log, because that's what we're doing when we handle the response from our server on the front end. So if we go through the motions again, I'm going to clean this up a little bit, and I'll leave the comments for right now. So if we go back to the application and we try to log in, boom, our response is an object with the key of token and the value of this JSON web token. Awesome. So the final step to sort of complete this login is that we need to create the session on the front end. So let's take another quick look at the user stories and make sure we're on track. Compare input password, done. Upon success, generate session token, done. That's what we just did. We've already covered responding with an error. And now on the front end, we need to set the session. We need to store that token so we can sort of verify that the user, like once we implement authorization, we can use that token to verify that the user is who they say they are and control what they have access to. So if we go back to the front end, the app.js file in the public scripts, we're going to want to do similar stuff here as we did with signup. So first thing, let's control for an error case. Rather than just logging the entire response, let's do if response.error will alert the error. Again, this is not the best user experience. So if you were gonna, implement this in your own applications, you want to do something better than alerting, but we don't need to right now. We really just care about the functionality of the authentication. and authorization. So this is basically saying if any of these use cases, aside from things working, happen, so if we don't have a user in the database, we get a response.error. If the username and password don't match, we get a response.error. So if what we get coming back from this route, from this post route, is an error, let's just alert it. And this should, this should essentially log either one of these. If they screw up, if our user screws up at any point in the sequence, they'll log the proper error. It'll alert, the proper error. Else, what do we want to do now? Assuming everything goes well, the user has entered the right email and password. We've verified that they're in the database. What did you say?
Let them sign in.
Let them sign in. Well, this is, let them sign in. So if we look at our user stories, what do we want? We want to set the client session. So how do we do that? Where do we store this token? How can we store it somewhere on the front end?
You set it to the local storage.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll do local storage dot set item. Basically the same code as we did here. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. Local storage dot set item. Create an item in local storage with the key of token and set it to be response.token. That's already in string form, so we don't have to modify it at all. And then once the token is set, we want to redirect the user to the secrets page. So this sort of completes this part of the login, which should at least. So let's make sure it works. We'll clear this out. If I check my application, I don't have anything in local storage right now. So if we log in, nothing happens. Got the token. Why didn't it work? Let's check. Oh, nothing is popping up in local storage. Let's try this again. I'm going to do a hard refresh. Winzer at galvanize.com. Yogi. Boom. Just needed to refresh. Nice. Oh, I actually already have the authorization stuff implemented. We'll talk more about that maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow, if that works for everyone, we'll do that tomorrow. So you're probably not seeing secrets pop up. That's because we haven't implemented getting just that one user's secret. So we can pretend for now that this doesn't exist. Should essentially just see everyone has secrets. So we've successfully logged in. We've been redirected to the secrets page. We have our token in local storage. And so now our sign up and our login is complete. Now, one last thing I want to do before we finish for today is let's implement this log out functionality, because this should be pretty straightforward, right? So I'm going to skip this stuff for right now. We'll deal with that tomorrow or next time we do this code along. And then for log out process, again, it's pretty straightforward. We just want to remove the token from local storage, and we want to do another redirect. So if we take a look at our, now this is going to be on the secrets.html page, and which is calling the secrets.js script. If you look down at the bottom, secrets.js, you probably don't have this jwt.decode. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about that when we do the authorization stuff. It's essentially just a script to allow you to decode tokens easily. So since we're calling the secrets.js file rather than app.js, let's take a look at that. Secrets.js, I already have some code here. I'm going to cut this and move it right now. Ignore this stuff. Make some space. So this is our document.ready function. Right now I have declared a do you guys have anything in here at all? The secrets.js? Empty? Okay, let's do it from scratch. So I'm storing the URL in case we need to use this URL in any of our logic here. It's not going to be part of the logging out process. But so you can declare const URL equals http://localhost 3000. Same way we have here in the app.js file. And then you can kind of copy this this document.ready syntax right from your app.js file. We'll paste it in secrets.js, and then essentially remove everything from it. Let's get rid of all that stuff. Let me get rid of this comment too. So what do we want to do? We want to make it so that when the user clicks on this logout button, that they actually log out. Right now, it doesn't do anything. So we're going to need to target that button somehow. If we look at secrets HTML, this is where that link is coming from. We have this A class UI item with the text of logout. So that's this button right here, or this link. So I'd rather not target it. We're going to use jQuery to target it and select it. I'd rather not use this very generic class name in case somewhere else in the application we're using it. Like you see, we have item here. We also have item here. We've got UIs all over the place. This may be the only, yeah, essentially like this is not unique enough. So let's create an ID so that we can target exactly this logout button. Let's just give it an ID of logout because that's what it does. And then if we go over to our secrets.js file, let's store that in a variable. Actually, let's do const $logout, since this is a jQuery variable, equals $. Actually, do we have access? Do we have jQuery in here? Let's check. Yeah, we have jQuery. Awesome. So const $logout equals $, parentheses, quotes, £, logout. Go ahead and log that to make sure we've done it properly. Let's just refresh this page. Cool. Logout is not defined. It's secrets.js line 34. I'm just going to comment all of this code out right now. This is stuff that we'll deal with when we do the full authorization. Let's try this again now. Refresh the page. Okay, we do. We get a log of this, this link tag. So we are capturing it properly. And now we want to write some logic, right? So we can do $logout. And then essentially we want to, this should be a click handler, right? Because when someone clicks on it, we want to execute this logout logic. So we can do logout.click. And then we could write our logic in an anonymous function right here. I don't really like that. It is totally viable, but I really prefer to declare functions. I really like to write name functions and just pass the name function right there as a reference. So what should we call this function? Let's just call it logout. That's pretty descriptive. It's exactly what we want to do. So this is going to be our callback function for the click handler. So there are two things that we need to do to log out properly, and then we'll wrap up and we'll continue the rest later. So let's see if it says in the user stories. Remove session token and redirect to home page. So remove token and then redirect to home page. So to remove the token, we're going to need to deal with local storage again, right? So we've seen this local storage.get item. We've seen local storage.set item. There should be a way to remove something from local storage. So let's just look it up. Local storage, how about delete local storage? Storage.remove item. Pretty straightforward. So if we do local storage.remove item, this is kind of like getting an item. We don't need to pass multiple arguments. We essentially just need to identify the key of of whatever we want to remove. So if we check our app again and go to application, take a look at local storage, the key for our token is token. That's how we set it up initially in this file. We set item key token to be the value of the response token. So if we do local storage.remove item token, that should clear it out. And then the second thing we want to do is redirect to the home page, very similar to redirecting to the secrets page. So we can use that same location href syntax. So we can do location.href equals, and then it's going to be a local path. We can do slash, instead of slash secrets HTML, slash index HTML. So if the user wants to log out, get rid of their session, remove their credentials, get rid of that whole token, essentially clear out local storage since that's all we're storing, and then just send them back to the index page where they could log in again, or they could sign up with a new username or password, email or password. And right now we've declared this function, but we're not calling it anywhere. So let's call it right in here. So on the click of this logout button, let's log the user out. And we have this in our ready function so that our handler gets attached to the logout button when the page is loaded. Does that make sense? All right, cool. Let's try it out. So if we refresh this page, user is logged in. We have a token. Now if we click log out, nothing happens. Wonderful. Let's try that again. Nope, not working. Did I save this file? I did. Worked for me. It worked for you?
Yeah.
What is wrong with my computer? Let's just run it again. Restart it. Well, if it worked for both of you, then that's what matters most. And then that means the code works. Let's try again here. Already have a token. Why? Can you see anything I missed in my code? Do the same things?
The ending parenthesis on click.
Oh my god, you're right. Thank you. Let's try one more time.
Broken.
Broken. I think NodeMon just needed to restart. Fingers crossed. Come on. Boom. There we go. My computer is slowing down big time because my battery is running out. All right, sweet. So we did it. We've got sign up now. We've got log in working. We've got log out working. So we've really narrowed things down a lot. Next time we'll do, we're already doing some of this authentication stuff. We'll do the authorization. Essentially, we'll make it so that when you navigate to that secrets page, either on successful sign up or on successful login, that our server retrieves the proper data, the secrets just for that user, and displays them on the page. And that will essentially complete the project. Any questions? Awesome. Thank you both so much.